Hello guys, it's me Stark and I'm here today to talk about one of the strongest army openings and army compositions that you can use on Feudal Age. Of course you can use that with many civilizations, but especially the ones that can scale well into cavalry, because you can actually play with your scouts later on. And I'm here to talk about scout and skirmishers. So right here we do have a game from freaking Andy against Lewis. That was a small Arabia tournament that Onimaru hosts like every 1 or 2 weeks, I don't know. Anyway, what I mean here is that those guys do play seriously. So one of the most popular openings with most cavalry civilizations, and honestly, even with some archer civs, players are actually opening these sometimes, is the scout opening. The scout opening actually gives you a lot of stuff here. For example, you can go really quickly to the next age, start playing scouts, and then by using your scouts, you can start raiding and harassing your enemy base. Right here, Andy is playing against Georgian from Lewis, and he is opening here with his scouts. Already adding here double beat axe to his army composition and walling yourself. So basically this is what scout opening can allow you to do. You can start raiding your opponent, try to harass his economy here with your scouts, and meanwhile you just try to develop and wall your base. So that's a very interesting opening, and it's very popular. And as you can see, both players are using it at the moment. But sometimes there's something that can happen, which is basically one player realizing that the other has a very exposed map or a very exposed resource. For example, these berries here are terrible and that you can actually pressure your opponent by using that. Scouts alone will actually fail to do that, especially because at some point you are going to be walled. So it's very common that players will add up some other unit to then try to harass you. And usually the best one here are the archers, because of how much damage they can cause to villagers. If you have a group of archers behind a wall, your opponent will hardly be able to defend himself. So scout and archers has been one of the most popular strategies here, because of how archers complement the scout and because of how much damage output they can cause to villagers. And this has been like this for ages, guys. So this is a very popular technique in scout and archers, but I believe that there is a strategy that do counter this opening, which is basically scout into skirmisher. I think that the biggest thing here is that our builds nowadays are more solid, and we are actually looking forward to play with less units. It's not so often that you are going to see players going for like 10 scouts and 20 archers during Feudal Age. You are actually going to see smaller groups and players more focusing a bit more on developing their economies in order to click up to the next age. On top of that, you can just play defensive and add some towers to make sure that you will actually be able to go towards the next age. As you can see, Lewis, for example, he's fully walled and he has a tower on gold. There are no weak spots for Andy to properly exploit without taking some big risks there. So for that reason, it's very common that players will not stay that long on Feudal Age, as they used to did on the past, where, well, we were not such wallers, right? Right here, as you can see, the idea of playing this opening is pretty basic. You do want to have more scouts than your opponent, so this is one key aspect of the strategy, because you will need to overwhelm your opponent. And of course, if he has way too few archers, these archers will barely be able to do something, and your scouts alone can deal with that. The problem is, as time goes by, the archer number might increase, and not only that, but your opponent might also use spearmen. For that reason, at this point, your scouts alone are not going to be able to do that, and you are not going to be able to deal with archer numbers that are growing over time, and are not going to be able to deal with spearmen as well. So for this reason, skirmishers are a lot better. And of course, the idea here is basically pressuring your opponent using scout and skirmisher. Skirmishers do have a very good pierce armor, which allows them to go for more aggressive plays. The biggest thing here about the skirmishers, guys, is actually their armor and their bonus against ranged units. So as you can see, even without the fletching, which is one of the best upgrades here for the skirmisher, and they can still keep pressuring Lewis here with his skirmishers and sniping down enemy spearmen, and even fighting against archers while having less numbers. If you want to get the full potential of your army, I do recommend you to go for 2 upgrades. the fletching for the skirmishers and also the padded archer armor that will increase your defense here versus enemy archers. On this game they are going towards the castle age, and then obviously the player can choose whether he wants to play with the cavalry that he was already setting up or with the skirmishers. You can pretty much play with both, or if you want to, you can even make a transition to go something else like cav archers. So it's up to you, but this is a very good opening. Let's take a look here on another game, but as you can see, the archer player will just not be able to advance against the skirmisher, and if he keeps investing way too much into scouts, he's just gonna delay his uptime by a lot. On this game, by the way guys, and this decision was to transition here into light cavalry and also step lancer. Since he's the kittens, this is a pretty powerful army composition, of obviously later focusing on his farms, on his other economical upgrades, and eventually transitioning back to elite skirmisher. So yes, you can also keep up this composition, but with different units like knights plus elite skirmisher, like step lancer plus elite skirmisher. So that's not something that you are just gonna do during the feudal age, but you can just keep this army composition for a long period of time, and this will actually be pretty good. This cavalry can deal with mangonels, this cavalry can raid, the skirmishers will just deal with the cav archers for you. So that's one of the best army compositions. Let's take a look here on another game that the feudal age was a bit more active, so that I can show you guys what I'm talking about. On this game we have once again another game from this same series here, but we do have Lewis playing as the Lithuanian against freaking Ending playing as Khmer. As I have stated before, and you guys are probably gonna know this when I release the civilization videos, Scout and Skirmisher is one of the best strategies here for the Lithuanians. Lithuanians do receive 100 food per town center, which means that right here Lewis already starts with extra 100 food, and he can do a very good uptime towards the next age. Not only that, but he also has both Skirmisher and Spearman line that does walk 10% faster, and that's a lot better for the Skirmisher. It's very helpful for his army composition for this very reason. Right here, as you can see, the game has started. Lewis already starting for the scout opening. Same thing is probably being done here by freaking Andy. So as I said, that's a very common approach, and as you can see, both players can actually go towards their transitions here. Andy is already dropping here an archer range and starting to collect some gold. I think that one of the reasons that Khmer likes to go for this strategy is because they are quite vulnerable when fighting against spearmen, especially because they usually do not want to make a barracks. For this very reason, it's very common for the Khmer to transition early into archers. Knowing that your opponent has an archer range, I would say that the best thing you can do is to react by making your own archer range and start making skirmishers. One of the biggest known talked about advantages of the scout and skirmisher is you can react to your opponent. So right here, Andy had to invest early into the archer range. He had to invest into the mining camp, and for that reason he couldn't place so many farms. As for Lewis, only now he's going towards the archer range, and for that reason he was able to invest into more farms. And you know the meaning of that? It means that he will be able to keep a continuous production of scouts if you want, or that he can just mass more food to invest into upgrades or into a better uptime to the castle age. So there we have the same setup here, archers and scouts versus versus scouts and skirmishers. The other biggest advantage from skirmishers is that they produce faster than archers. So archers do take a lot longer to be produced, which means that even if you start making skirmishers after your opponent already has a few archers, you're actually going to scale pretty well. And obviously, as I said, archers, in order to be at least a threat, they do need fletching. Without the fletching, I think that units like scouts can just jump on them. You do not need to respect them that much. But the skirmishers, well, they already have all they need: the bonus versus ranged units plus the 3 pierce armor, which makes them quite annoying to deal with. Look at this skirmisher. It only has 2 attack, but once it hits an archer, it will actually deal something like 5 damage because of this bonus versus ranged units versus archer units. And that's basically it. The Khmer, in order to face off the skirmishers, will be forced to either fully upgrade his archers or keep making scouts, while the Lithuanian, well, he'll probably be able to keep making more scouts for the very reason of he's not on gold, which means that he can focus a bit more on the farming than the Khmer player. So basically, this is a very good for the scout and skirmisher player to keep his numbers up here. And of course, you can just keep pressuring your opponent, let the scouts be the main the protagonists of this attack, and just use the skirmishers as a support unit. Of course, if you are playing against a civilization like Britons, Ethiopians, or some heavy archer civ, perhaps you might actually have to minimize the impact of scouts a bit and invest a bit more into the skirmishers. And take a look on that, guys. Even with the fletching, the skirmishers without it can actually trade pretty well and basically keep up the things here by raw numbers. So this, in my opinion, is one of the best feudal age approaches you can have. Basically, no spearman will take place once both players have enough ranged units on the field, and it's just a matter of having more scouts. It's crucial that you have more scouts, and since you are not investing yet into food before going into some heavy farming, it will always be possible that you are going to have more scouts than your opponent. So scout and skirmishers. Later, if you want to prioritize upgrades, I would give priority to the fletching for the skirmisher, and then adapt according to the army composition. Right here, Lewis is actually investing into the armor for the scout cavalry to withstand more damage from both scouts and archers. So basically making a front line for his army using scouts. So try that, guys, and you are probably going to succeed pretty well. Game keeps going on. Andy has already invested into some armor as well. Lewis has invested here is investing into bloodlines, and I want to explain here when you are engaged into a fight, what do you want to do? When you engage into a fight, what you actually want to do here is patrol your scouts in order to kill the enemy scouts, and you want to manually micro your skirmishers. Put those guys like all in a control group, and once the battle starts, you keep getting closer to the archers. Do not then just evade your range, and you keep hitting the archers one by one. So every time you stop, you kill one archer, or if you are closer to the archers than you are to the scouts, you can even use the stop command to kill multiple archers at once. Let's take a look here. The scouts are jumping, one archer down. Patrol the scouts, one archer down. Another archer down. Another archer down. Another archer down. And that's basically it. Your skirmishers should keep chasing the archers non-stop while the scouts do the fight. For this reason, it's very important that you have more scouts than your opponent, because his archers are probably going to be focusing on your scouts as well. So he'll have in most of the time his units focusing on the scouts and trying to avoid your skirmishers. And what you should actually do is to use this control group to keep your skirmishers always chasing down the archers. Patrol the scouts, chase down the archers. If your opponent also happens to have some spearmen, just kill the spearmen faster, or prioritize killing the spearmen, since they are the ones that can actually deal more damage to your scouts, and then you keep up with the fight. So I think that with that we can actually cover everything from this opening. Of course, let's talk about the Castle Age. As I said, on Castle Age, you can pretty much choose whatever you want to play. If you want to focus more on scouts, if you want to focus more on skirmishers. Since you are going to the Castle Age, and if you did a very good economy like Lewis did on his game, you can actually keep spamming here scouts, which is pretty good, and then just transition to light cavalry. So light cavalry transition is pretty good, elite skirmisher transition is pretty good. It always depends on how you want to play, but having this army composition will, in most of the times, will be pretty good for you. And there you go, guys. Scout and Skirmishers 2.0 here. Once in Castle Age, Lewis is still pressuring his opponent using light cavalry, and he's also upgrading elite skirmisher. I would say that the only unit that can single-handed deal with this are the knights, because knights are heavy cavalry, which can withstand damage from both skirmishers and light cavalry and kill them. So in order to add another unit to your composition and counter the only thing that can kill you on this right now, which are the knights, the recommendation here is to go for monks, because by doing that, you basically have somewhere to run to. If things get bad, you just go back, run towards the monks, and your opponent is just gonna have a minimized leverage here to use his knights. And of course, then you can choose if you want to play defensive with skirmishers and monks, if you want to transition into knights. This is very situational, but it's just to show that this composition that started to take place during the feudal age can just scale pretty well and keep you ahead on the game. Hope you guys enjoyed. This was the small talk that we had here about scout and skirmishers. Try that strategy, especially versus scout and archers, and tell me how it went for you guys. A final battle to finish that. Yep. And that's it, guys.